What is up, dudes and dudettes? So this is an update to the last video I posted was about the lift on my truck, the Icon Springs, the Fox FRS DSEs, the 2.5s. Great handling setup. I will do a separate video on that, on just kind of how I've tinkered with the settings on that and what I feel is the smoothest ride you can get. Well, as of right now, I still have more tinkering to do, but that's on this truck. And what I mean by that's on this truck is I mentioned in my last video that I had an oil leak, and I said I might take legal action on it. So I contacted Ford, and Ford, as of yet, they're being somewhat, accommodating, meaning that they've accepted that I have brought this up to them, and I have a claim number, but it's not a full-fledged claim number. It's like a pre-claim number because I didn't actually take my vehicle to the dealership yet. So since I had already mentioned this on a video and stuff, that's kind of my evidence, and I have video coverage of the leak. It's not like it's squirting out, and it's not just like dripping all over the ground, but part of the cross member underneath the upper oil pan, the bell housing itself, for bell housing to the transmission was wet looking, and both sides of my lower oil pan were completely wet. And I'm talking completely wet. The only part that wasn't wet was like an area like this in the middle, right underneath my oil pan, my lower oil pan. So you could still, the oil was going like this on both sides, and didn't quite make it to the middle yet. Probably because, I don't know, maybe there's a little dip in that pan or something. I'm not really sure. So anyway, I took it to the dealership, and I'm not going to get into the personnel there because this really has nothing to do with the video, and it's not going to do any good talking about them. But let's just say bad experience. Underqualified, bad experience, all the above. It was a crap show. I'm not going to say the S word because I don't know who's watching this, but it was really bad. And I didn't even get the technician. I specifically requested a technician, and I pushed my appointment date out because I wanted the technician that worked on my upper oil pan twice. He is the technician that has replaced or pulled my transmission out and got to my upper oil pan and did the RTV gasket maker treatment on it, whatever Ford recommends. So I didn't get him. I take my truck in, I drop it off. I'm thinking, okay, it's pretty obvious that there's a leak. That it doesn't just get wet like that out of the clear blue sky. It's not like this oil's leaching up from the asphalt and makes the undercarriage that wet. Otherwise, everybody's vehicle would be covered in oil. So I have to call the dealership and I ask them, what's the update? What's going on? And I asked him what Kevin said, and that was a technician that worked on my upper oil pan twice. And he said, it wasn't Kevin, it was Ryan. It was his assistant. Assistant? What, like the person that runs his paperwork back and forth, and he's the one that's performing some really in-depth kind of evaluation on my vehicle that he probably has never seen before, doesn't know what to look for. So what did this assistant do in his infinite wisdom? Because he's an assistant, he cleans off the whole entire area. The lower oil pan, the upper oil pan, my bell housing, everything with probably brake cleaner, something like that. And I mean, it is spotless underneath there. And he puts dye into my oil and goes for a short drive and gets up there with the black light. So I don't see any leaks. Well, if it's barely leaked that much, to the point where it's not dripping on the ground after about 6,000 miles of driving and towing. Well, since I've done this oil change, I've towed 3 times. Not heavily going to the desert, but I've towed 3 different times, just going camping and whatever. I drove to Utah from Southern California here, and it's, I think, total round trip is 1,100 miles or something like that. It took that long for that leak to kind of rear its ugly head. So I don't think going for a 5-minute drive is going to really do anything. And if it's leaking from an area where you can't see, where like the bell housing comes and mates up to the engine block, and then you have your upper oil pan that kind of meets right there, you can't really see up in there too well. So did he even really look hard, or did he just do this kind of quick once over? So that was one of my gripes, and I ended up emailing Ford my experience there, and the fact that I don't feel that they've checked out my vehicle properly, because I know what a leak looks like, and I know what a leak smells like, and I could still smell it. And everybody knows what used diesel oil smells like. It has a really weird, funky, sweet smell, metallic-y sweet smell. I don't even know how to explain it, but it doesn't smell good at all. And it kind of starts making you nauseous after a while. And I still smell it. I still smell it as of today. And I got my truck back sometime, I think it was last week. And I don't know. I don't see the leak, but like I said, it could take quite a while for it to present itself again. So as I'm underneath my truck, and I figured, you know what? I don't know if I really accept that. I don't really want that dye in my oil, and I don't know if it causes any harm or not. But I'm very meticulous about my vehicle and what's inside of the engine, what's outside of everything. You know, I'll keep it for the most part pretty clean, as you can see. She's looking pretty nice, and that's after 2 days of rain, and you know, I just wanted to get the oil out. So of course, I pull the oil out, yank it all out. I drain this thing. I usually let everything drain pretty good for a while, to the point where when I put my oil filter back on, there's not even one drop coming out of that oil filter housing, assembly, whatever you want to call it. So as I'm underneath, and I shot a little brake clean around the area, because you're going to get a little drop or something like that on the side of your upper oil pan and whatnot. And I'm just kind of checking around, going like, okay, let me just check for other things, because they always miss stuff. It seems like every time. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So first, they did miss one time is, if you could see that, if you see my vacuum line right there, that goes to my four-wheel drive. You see, it's just kind of hanging around. And that little plug thing is not where it's supposed to be in the radius arm right there. Yeah, that's your Ford technicians for you right there. So eventually, if it stretches too much, whatever, who knows, I get it wrapped up in my four-wheel drive shaft there. What it has been doing is it has been smashing when I hit the bump stops, and it's been smashing right there. So eventually, I will have no four-wheel drive on that side, and I will have to use the locking hub no matter what. Really fun to deal with on a, sorry guys, I'm trying to lay down and get underneath here. Really fun to deal with an $70,000 truck, right? So then we're going to come into here, and you guys all know what, if you're working on these vehicles, sorry, I am trying to scoot without ruining my good clothes here, but you know what, let me just flip the camera around like this so you can see me, and then I'm going to go ahead and, all right, we're back. So as you can see, I don't leave anything on my oil pan anywhere. I mean, there's no oil anywhere. Everything is spotless. And this is what the technician's assistant and the service writer, in all his infinite wisdom, which, God, I swear to God, my 9-year-old knows more than him. But they said it was residual from an oil change. I don't understand how you get residual from an oil change going all the way right here, all the way on this other side, and it was completely wet on both sides. And look how clean it is now. So they cleaned all of this evidence off that there was a leak. Now, if you can see right, where's my finger at? Right there. On my axle, right there on the pumpkin, there's actually a little bit of evidence of where it was kind of leaking over there. And they didn't clean that off. So they tried to get away with it, didn't clean it off. And what I meant by was leaking on the cross member thing, it's right here. If you stick your hand up in there, it's pretty wet. And I cleaned a lot of stuff off, but and I know it's not from the last time it was leaking. It's definitely because there was not really any dirt on it. This is kind of a fresh leak. And if you look around my drain bolt, I mean, there's nothing. There's not one drop of oil. That's how meticulous I am about my stuff. So the fact that they're telling me this was residual from an oil change, kind of a slap in the face to me, and really just shows you the competency level of the people that work in some of these dealerships. But again, it was the technician's assistant and a service writer. And we all know our lovely service writers are. I don't even know really why they even get technical with you. Sometimes they start speaking this tech terms with you. Just shut up. Get the technician out here and explain it to me. So, anyway, I had this big write up about it. But as we're underneath the vehicle, show you something. I'm going to do this kind of like glancing around, stuff like that. And everything looks pretty normal. I'd like to look underneath here because, like I said before, I don't know if I mentioned another vehicle, but the second time they replaced or fixed my upper oil pan, they dented the crap out of my transmission oil pan. I mean, and this is a different one. This is a different style, but the original style that came on this truck, it was smashed in. I mean, smashed in. Because they put their jack underneath here, and they have to take the transmission back. They have to take the mount off right here, and disconnect the mount and everything, and move the whole transmission back so they can get to the upper oil pan. Makes sense, right? That's kind of common sense, right? Well, not only did they dent the crap out of this pan, which they definitely replaced, they forgot to put my good old harness back, it's secured with its little clippies. And that thing was actually kind of, for some reason, was propped up here. And I'm like, oh, great. I'm going to put it in four-wheel drive. I'm going to yank my whole transmission harness out, and I won't have a transmission working. But, again, attention to detail, which they don't do. And it was one point in time, you can't really barely see it, but right there where the transmission output shaft is, that they messed up that seal, because when they pulled it back, they probably forgot to pull the drive shaft off, and yanked it back and went boop and messed up my seal. So that's all that's happened so far with my truck with this stupid upper oil pan leak. It's really just annoying. And I'm looking around, and I don't know if you guys have seen it yet, and I'm pretty sure you guys with really keen eyes and attention to detail have already seen it. Yep, that's a bell housing bolt missing. Well, screw, because it's not a nut and a screw put together. So it is a bell housing screw that is missing. I don't know how long that's been missing. I don't change my oil that often, only because I don't drive the truck that often. So I'm less than probably 5,000 miles a year on this truck. And so I don't usually crawl underneath my truck to check for missing hardware. And you shouldn't. Nobody should. Because you should have faith. Factory trained technicians. Correct? So I understand there's a human factor in there no matter what. With that being said, human factor, I think the robot originally from the factory that did my RTV on my upper oil pan. So, yeah, there's always the robot factor in there too. So, anyway, I don't know. Kind of getting off track here, but I'm missing hardware, and I shouldn't have to deal with that. You guys shouldn't have to deal with it. I'm going to try to get up, and I'm not going to cut this video. I'm not going to edit it. So, you're going to come over here and grunt and groan with me while I try to get myself up here. So, anyway, I find this bolt missing, right? This nut. Sorry, I mean the screw. And head to the dealership. They want me to go back in there, leave my truck again for who knows how long. And my response was, well, no. I'm not going to take my truck back into a place. I'm going to get this screw put in there, and I'm probably going to leave with my drive shaft missing or something. I don't know what I take it in there, something's going to go missing. Just like why I don't take my truck to the dealership for oil changes, because these guys are, a dime a dozen. They hired some dude, some young kid, 18 years old, 17 years, whatever. Hey, I've done oil changes my whole life. I did with the garage with my dad. And they jack your whole stuff up. So I got this. And that is the part number. That is the one screw that they gave me. Okay, they gave me one. That's cool. And then some torque specs. And this is for applicable to my vehicle. Awesome. So, everything I just said to you guys was outlined in my email to Ford. I love my truck, but the fact that I'm missing hardware here, and that wasn't the first time they missed hardware at the dealership. When they did pull the transmission back one time, they have to take the transmission skid plate off, and I'm sure you guys saw in that video. But there's four screws, 2 on each side, and they forgot one of them, and they ran back there into the engine or the bay. Oh, I know it's here somewhere, and I go, this is really concerning to me that you just have hardware laying around and you don't even know what it belongs to. Now, I don't know if any of you guys are military folk watching this, but me working for the DoD for 20 years, you kind of get trained about FOD and stuff like that, and you have to account for every tiny little piece. Doesn't matter what it is. Broken tool. Guess what? You break a tiny little tip off of your pliers, it has to be reported, because that tiny little piece can end up in some gear train somewhere and render a component completely inoperable, and now you're risking lives at the expense of cutting corners and or just being complacent and totally irresponsible. So does my truck have other parts that fell out or they weren't replaced properly or whatever as they're putting this transmission back on, putting my upper oil pan back on? What can I expect to be missing or wrong with the rest of this vehicle? For the most part, it's been driving fine. But what if something just finally decides to let go? And it happens all the time, and I'm going to bring it back to military aircraft and stuff like that. It's just you don't notice it right away, but it's a ticking time bomb, and all of a sudden, boom, now you got lots of lives. So I don't know if Ford really wants to deal with that, and I haven't got a response back yet. Now, granted, I sent the email yesterday, so I'll give them a little time to review it. But I'm asking that they replace my truck with a brand new one. I don't trust this truck anymore. Not only that am I noticing missing hardware, just, and I'm no expert in this stuff and everything, but how many times have they pulled my transmission out and back and everything, my drive shaft off and everything? There's so many times you can actually mess with something like that before it's deemed just a throwaway. I mean, you can't disassemble something so many times like that before you start having major issues. And mating surfaces start getting warped and whatever. They're not married correctly anymore. And if I'm towing and pushing this truck to 100% of its rated capacity, I probably anyone would be a little concerned with their family in the vehicle. And you're going, across these mountain passes and stuff with sheer cliffs on each side of you and towing your trailer and all that stuff. So I don't know if Ford doesn't come through with something, then I don't know. If something happens to me and my family, well, then I don't know. That's a massive lawsuit that my rest of my family will be getting. But then they don't have us, and you can't replace lives. So I'm asking for a brand new truck, a straight trade. They can fix this one, whatever they're going to do with it, and they're going to have to do a thorough eval, not just something we're going to keep at the dealership for a few days, and you're going to have Joe Schmo's assistant go and once over in between his smoke breaks and stuff like that. That's not to me making sure a truck is sound. Fortunate for vehicles is you can pull off to the side of the road if something kind of goes awry, and most of the time, unless something catastrophic happens. But with aircraft and stuff, what I deal with is there's no road to pull over. You can't just bail. I mean, you can bail in some of the aircraft, but then the people below you, now they're at risk. So do we risk, does a big conglomerate risk the lives of the people that are the occupants of this vehicle and possibly everyone else on the road around them? Or do they replace the vehicle and then they do a full thorough investigation? And I'm not, and they could probably do that to this truck, but I'm not going to be out of commission for months while they're doing their investigation on something that I paid a lot of money for. So, no fault of mine, and I keep on getting kind of these weird things happening at the dealership, and this leak keeps on rearing its ugly head. I want a new truck. Now, if the inventory is low and they can't find a brand new truck for me, which I'm looking at the 2022s, my local dealership, the one I go to, they have a few of them. Special orders, the buyer obviously dropped out because the interest rates are rising. They realize they can't afford it after it took about a year to get delivered, or they buy me out. But the problem with buying me out, and usually with the buyback program, is they pay you what you paid for the truck. They give you the money that you paid for the truck. Well, unfortunately, in the last few years, we've all seen this crazy inflation. I was at the dealership yesterday and picking up my screw, and I saw an XLT, a 2022 XLT, didn't even have navigation, cloth seats, obviously. It had no panoramic moonroof. It was a 250, and it was a 4x4, but ultimately didn't have all these creature comforts that my truck has, right? 72,000 is the MSRP. The MSRP of this truck when I bought it was 68 something. That kind of tells you the inflation factor that we're dealing with here. So if I were to get this same truck 2022 configured the way my truck is, 80 something $1,000 easy all day long. So I think it'd behoove Ford if they just gave me something that they've already produced and it's sitting on a lot, and then we just do the RAV and call it a day. But that's really not up to me. That's up to Ford, and let's see what they say. But that's the update to what I kind of, hinted on my last video. But I just don't know if I want to continue modding this vehicle when I just really don't feel comfortable towing with it now. And we had some trips planned coming up to go to the desert, and I just told my family, sorry guys, until we figure out what Ford's going to do, I just don't feel comfortable towing the trailer with this truck. And desert's not going anywhere. I'd rather be safe than sorry, and make sure no one's going to die here. So let me know what you guys think, if anyone's gone through a buyback and if Ford's actually accommodating with that. Am I being unreasonable about just the integrity of this vehicle now? Is that just a bunch of crap, like, oh yeah, I work on vehicles all the time and I yank engines, put them all back on all the time, and they last 1,000,000 miles? Or is this a legitimate gripe? Is my concern legitimate? The fact that I keep on having a reoccurring problem, and then I have a service center that just misses hardware in the vehicle, and I just don't know what else is missing, and also being unreasonable about like not wanting to wait for Ford to just go through this for several months and have an engineer look at it and make sure everything's sound and everything, and NDI the metal, make sure there's no cracks in it. I mean, do we really? I mean, by the time a company would go through all that, involve so many personnel and trying to figure out a problem, you could have bought 3 trucks by that point. So, and it's kind of the same, similar to what I deal with at my work. It's like, we're going to involve all these engineers and all these people and stuff like that. How much those people get paid an hour, multiply that by how many people and how many hours, and now you've bought 20 of that product and you still didn't fix the issue. So, it just depends on what they do. So let me know, guys, what you think. If I'm being totally unreasonable, if I'm just overthinking it, or if I do have a case on my hands, and if it's something that you guys would pursue if you were in the same position. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will do an update on some stuff I already had purchased before I really was going to go down this road, and why I think it's necessary to go along with this Icon kit, even though they don't recommend it. So I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.